But first, a message from our sponsor. Comic books have come a long way over the years. They've always been wonderful works of art, but it took the public a while to catch on. We've also seen comics journey from a cheap disposable entertainment to hard-bound, designed with painstaking craft, and back again. And not only does the look of comics range from tiny folding zines with single images to 600-page epics and oversized artist editions, but the subject matter that these stories cover is infinite. Comic books, even American comics, were never just about superheroes, and genre type means less in comics than any other art form. The relationship between words and pictures is the essence of comics, and that is ingrained in the DNA of humanity. Comic books are world culture. From fun fantasy to entertaining education, there is something in comics for every person. In this show, we'll check out the comics that I come across in my own journey to becoming the cartoonist that I want to be. All of the books that you'll see were either purchased directly from the creators or in most cases from local comic shops. So when we find something that interests you, please head to your friendly neighborhood comic shop where small business owners and nice people are ready to help. But there's only one way you're going to find that perfect story.
Read more comics.
Hey everybody, Scott O'Green here. Welcome to episode 3 of Read More Comics. Let's go ahead and jump right in here, shall we? Alright, we have Rock Candy Mountain by Kyle Starks, Peculia by Richard Sala, and Grotesque by Sergio Pancioni. Once again, I hope I pronounce all those correctly. I'm not particularly good at last names. But let's jump right in here to Grotesque. This comes from us from Fantagraphics Books. The one I picked up on the shelf was number 2. I found this in the independent section at my local comic shop, Comics Place in Bellingham, Washington. I was looking there in particular. I don't always shop from there. I like a lot of people go to like the new in this week rack, but over on this rack is where heavy metal and things like this and local stuff and other things that just don't quite fit the normal size or the normal brands or whatnot. But so I started with number 2. I looked through a couple different things and was deciding on something where the art looked cool, kind of an interesting story. When I saw this book, I immediately grabbed it. They had 3 on the shelf as well, but I only had so much money at the time, so I started with picking up number 2. Definitely going to have to seek out the rest of these at this point, though upon further research, I did notice that it was saying that the 4th one is out of print and therefore very expensive to find. But one of the first things I noticed about this one, and I'm not a super educated person as far as history of cartooning and all the different types and artists throughout the years and everything, but I noticed this guy and noticed that kind of big-footed slump posture and that kind of cartoony clown foot thing as very familiar, and thought, is that Crumb? Is that, that? And the name that came to mind was Mr. Natural. So I looked it up, and sure enough, this definitely seems to me as a pretty direct ode to Mr. Natural. And then the real hard blacks and the kind of scary, sort of bizarre bend-on stuff, the beautiful feathering and things like that reminded me of Charles Burns. Is that correct? I want to say David Burns, but I think it's Charles Burns. Another, famous guy beyond my knowledge, obviously. But that's why I'm doing this, to kind of help myself learn and hopefully turn you guys on to something cool. But this is a really neat story that I noticed. It's very, let me flip back here to one of those first. This right here, very geometric in execution, but still very organic, and with just kind of, it's got 3 tones on this. It's very solid black and white, and then adds this other kind of, not quite orange, but comes off as, to me, on this sort of not white paper. But I just love that 3-tone effect. It's really simple, but you really get a good feel for the depth of the world, and just the design with even like the feathering on the color parts of it like that, I think are just super badass. All the textures, the somewhat, I guess maybe not manic, but precise nature of things, it doesn't make it come off as less organic. With the geometric and the very precise, it all, feels very natural to me. So I really enjoyed it. And it's a really bizarre story. I don't understand how, like this says here, it's part 13. Let's see, Grotesque is number 2. Grotesque number 2 is the 13th book in the Ignatz collection. Ignat's collection, yeah. But anyway, so I don't know exactly what that is. There's like 20 some odd iterations, and then this had 4 parts, but I don't think necessarily came out in order. So I'm not really sure the tradition of this book, except for what it looked like at a glance was just awesome cartoonists telling bizarre stories. And this one I thought was really cool. The world that this sort of Mr. Natural guy is coming into is a very geometric thing, it seems like. He's an outside force coming into it. And I don't think he goes by Mr. Natural in this, but that looking character is he's rounded shapes, hair, organic cloth, rounded and everything. But everyone else, the very square jawline, the city and everything is very geometric and almost rigid at times. And so I don't know if that's a purposeful thing to just kind of tie in that, if this is an ode to Crumb as well as like many other cool cartoonists, if it's like a little commentary on something old coming into a situation of something new. I don't know, kind of down a rabbit hole on that one. And that's what this does. It's a psychological drawing. It's cool storytelling on its own, but it always feels like it's representative of something else. It's always getting you thinking in a sort of Hitchcock way about the other parts of this world. Like you're interested in everything they're telling you, but then equally interested in what you're not being told, which is part of what makes me just have to get more of this story, as well as I just got to get more of this art. This artist I'm definitely going to check out more of. Sergio Pancioni definitely won some awards and is recognized. He's an Italian cartoonist, I believe, teaches cartooning, definitely knows his stuff, but I feel like I really identify with this style. Like it's much more crisp and clean, I feel like, than what I do, but I love it. You can see the love of ink on this, as well as the love of comics, and I really dig this book, and I highly recommend it. I did get number 2, and so that's all I've read is number 2 out of the 4 issues, so it's a bit out of context. What I've read, though, as you can tell, I love, and don't want to show you everything on it, but as you can see, just really cool imagery, really strange, but really crisp, and I am a big old fan, so... Yep, that's this one here, Grotesque number 2. I'm gonna be searching out this one and getting the rest of it, so if anyone out there has an extra copy of the 4th one and wants to hit me towards that or sell it at a reasonable price at this point, I gotta find this story. I gotta find it. Alright, what do we have next? Another Fantagraphics book. This is Peculiar by Richard Sala. Once again, don't know if I'm saying that right, but I did notice that name, Richard Sala, on another installment from that Ignat's collection. So I'm going to be looking into more of that, not just those 4 issues, but what else there is to offer. But yep, this is another book from Fantagraphics. It's a trade that I found, Peculiar. This was another one where I actually got my wife to buy it because it looked so cool, and it was something that she was totally into. So I was like, come on, honey, isn't that a cool book? If you buy it, then I'll get to read it. And sure enough, I did. I'm not a hugely knowing person of Fantagraphics, and we've seen a few from them already, but it's something I've come to know from cartoonist Kayfabe, Mike Emirates. I've heard talk about them in the 100s community, and I've heard that name before. Once again, I'm compared to a lot of you out there, somewhat newer to comics, so finding all of the cool other stuff is super interesting to me at this point, especially since I'm getting into learning to be a cartoonist all on my own. But especially now that I live out here in Bellingham, Washington, seeing the name more, and then when you see that it's in Seattle, Washington, my backyard, and I can go down to the bookstore there. It's pretty cool to have that in the backyard. But so that brings us to this art. Once again, black and white, very heavy blacks and whites for that kind of horror comic, possibly. This one was described as a goth but funny comic, which they knew was kind of contradictory on itself, but this pulls it off. It really is the imagery I love with the strange magic. It's kind of a Halloween world that's created. It's not just witches, it's more than that, but everyone's a little strange. You don't really get a solid feel of where this is. It feels like it's, modern Salem, but a fantasy Salem where, I don't know, it's hard to kind of pinpoint where you are. The illustration is great on it. It's very telling. It really, sometimes you look at comics and they're trying to fool you into thinking like it's a three-dimensional world. And while this art doesn't come off as flat to me by any means, it really seems to celebrate the fact that it's pen on a two-dimensional page. And what can I do with that for fun expressions with simple characters, and really achieves a lot. Once again, a bit of a manic nature at certain parts to really get these cool, almost old-timey illustrations that you would see in books with all the cool line work. But then definitely a new flavor of storytelling and things like that. On top of kind of the Halloween themes and everything, there's always a bit of a titillating feature to it, which is fun. Definitely a part of kind of witch lore it themes, Halloween lore, horror movies, the kind of, sometimes more than others. This is much more a light, playful, kind of innocence into it, but once again, like I said, a bit sexual in nature at times. Nothing, like I said, overt sexually, just kind of a fun, playful, okay with the body. Like I said, a bit titillating at times, which I feel like is a part or a trope of horror comics and genre and everything. But it's very fun. It's this book especially. It's a collection from other things, from what I gather. So it's a collection into this trade of peculiar stories, and I don't know how much else there is out there. I'm definitely interested to find out more. The stories were fun. They were kind of micro, so every time we see this break here, it's another little short tale. So there's several throughout this book, and while I do find them very interesting and fun, the artwork is what's going to keep me coming back for more, and the setting and the world and everything. Honestly, I do enjoy Peculia as like a character. It's all a bit, it seems one-dimensional at times. They're very just micro stories that go together-ish. So it's not like the deepest storytelling to me, but maybe that's just kind of my dense nature, or maybe I just haven't read enough of it. But and that's not a slight against it at all. It's, once again, I've kind of described some of these other books that we've seen, a kind of Sunday funny cartoon, like a cartoon paper aspect to it, where it is these micro things with simple characters. But once again, the art in this is, if it looks simple, it's through great effort that it's simple. Like, it looks hard and everything, but it doesn't come off as like heavy-handed or overdone. So when I say simple, that's through great effort from the artist, I believe. And yeah, that cannot be easy. But yeah, so it wasn't like the deepest stories and anything, but it was a lot of fun stories. And just like I said, this would be another one, a good book for the coffee table or the loo, perhaps. Just to be able to read a short cartoon or two at a time, have a little fun. But I really enjoyed it. And like I said, the artwork is great. A lot of fun, very expressionistic and poses and everything else going on. And I love the fact that this bird here, I'm pretty sure, is a Steller's jay, which is about the coolest bird out there. If you like your crows and ravens, they're awesome. But look up a Steller's jay. It's got that same sort of blue jay or cardinal sort of shape and mohawk thing going on, but it's a blue to black blending on its wings, and it's super cool. So you guys gotta check it out. But really enjoyed this book, Peculia by Richard Sala. I highly recommend it. You should check it out. You don't necessarily have to get this one, I guess. I don't know the exact collection that this is, but this is the one I happened to pick up. It obviously looked pretty sitting on the shelf and was up our alley with cats and wolves and werewolves and ghouls and goblins and zombies and everything else glorious in the world. So let's see here. What else do we have? Last one. All right. Rock Candy Mountain by Kyle Starks. I love this book. It's really, really good. In fact, I read it and I loved it so much I went out and got the second one. Cool thing about this book is this is the whole story. While I would love to have more and everything, this was the tale he was setting out to tell, and this is it. And it ends very poignantly and emotionally. It's a fun, hilarious thing. It's hobos riding the rails, kind of post-World War II. I'm going to read this really quick because it really sums up what this book is about. So if you want to know, you'll know here real quick. So hang out with me for just a second, and then we'll start the flip through. Come along and ride the rails with the mysterious, unbeatable Hobo Jackson, plus his sidekick Pomona Slim, on his quest to find the mythical Hobo Heaven. But watch out for the devil, and the FBI, and the Hobo Mafia too. It's a fantastical fisticuff frolic through post-World War II America, via the rails and back roads, through underground fight clubs, prison, and the hobo jungles wrought with dangers, hobo fights, jokes, and locomotive excitement. So yeah, Kyle Starks from Sex Castle. He's done a lot of work on the Rick and Morty comics, which I know has got him pretty huge and everything. I must admit, I don't really know anything about Rick and Morty. I haven't read any of his other stuff yet, but I did pick up Assassination Nation because I've heard wonderful things about that. But this kind of post-World War II, anything from like 1900 to 1940, 1950, there's spaces throughout history that are awesome, but especially that kind of turn of the century up to the through the 40s, I think is just a fascinating time in American history plus everywhere else. So you may see a little bit of cussing through these pages, but this is one of our first really colored all the way comics, and as you can see, the devil, like, he's probably got some of the most gradients, which is interesting, maybe the most complex, timeless part of it. But considering the time and place that it's in, there's some very like muddy colors, very almost like it's the flats on the coloring. A subdued palette to say the least, which works great for kind of the time and place that it is. If it was just purely vibrant the whole time, it would kind of take you out of it. But yeah, you're riding the rails. It's this, post World War II like this. This is just beautiful coloring on this page, and I love the style of Kyle Starks. Once again, if I just picked up this and looked at the art, I might not go for it necessarily. But since it was something with the locomotives and the time period and blues and all that sort of riding the rails stuff that I really dig on, I wouldn't necessarily have picked it up. But because of that, I did. And I'm very glad I did now, because it's another one of those that I learn more and more about cartooning when I find stuff like this. My notions when I was a little kid that everything needed to look like Marvel, Jim Lee, or even Jack Kirby stuff from back in the day that, translated well to me as a kid. This stuff is different, and finding out more and more why I like different, and why I think my style, falls more along this type of stuff, more of a cartooning than a comic artist. I don't know how much that makes sense to everybody, but it's a really fun story. His even with these very cartoony characters, the fight scenes and choreography and rhythms to everything are outstanding. And I think for both fight sequences and for writing humor, as well as just comic writing in general, you have to have good timing, you have to have good rhythm, you have to be able to hit the beats. And Kyle Starks is pretty excellent at that, especially through this tale. But it's I can't say enough good things about it. I don't know what to say, what else, just why you should check it out. But definitely available at your local comic shops. 2 volumes, great stuff, heartwarming tale. You should check it out. Nothing else much to say. Oh, this type of stuff right here, his sound effects are brilliant. They're not like normal sound effects. It's not just a whiff, but just little things like that. Matt Kent, I know, had some. What did he say on it? He said that on the back. This book is so good that even the sound effects have literary merit, by Matt Kent. So come on. He's endorsing it. I'm endorsing it. And I'm an obvious genius. Don't take my word for it. You should check it out yourself. Reading Rainbow style. But yeah, I really love this book. 2 volumes. You can get them anytime. Go to your local comic shop. Don't buy them on Amazon. Or you can be like me, go to the local Comic-Con and get them signed. That's always fun too. I think I bought this one from him at Comic-Con and took this there to get signed. So come on, Image, let's put these together into one big beautiful hardcover. I don't know why we haven't yet. I'd rebuy it again for that. I think you guys should too. But go ahead and pick up this copy and get started. Beautiful colors by Chris Schweizer. Kyle Starks is the writer and artist. It's a beautiful tale. Pick it up today. Thanks very much for joining us. Next Wednesday, as usual, we'll have at least 3 new comics for you again to celebrate New Comic Book Day. So go ahead and head out to your store and buy up some comics, because remember, got to read more comics. Peace. Bye.
If you don't know already, Cartoonist Kayfabe is a huge inspiration behind this show. After all, it is the marching orders set forth by Jim Rugg and Ed Piskor, along with Tom Scioli, that gave rise to this segment in the first place. Cartoonist Kayfabe on YouTube is essential for comic book readers and aspiring cartoonists alike. It's the comic book show that the creators are watching. Anyhow, Thank you, Professors Piskor, Rugg, and Scioli. The education is appreciated. Find Cartoonist Kayfabe's link below.